Hello, I'm Phil Svitek, and in this episode, I give my review for his Dark Materials Season 2, Episode 4, Tower of the Angels. Now, just by that description, if you're joining me for the very first time, yes, it's going to be spoiler-filled. I assume you've seen the episode, therefore I'm going to talk about it in that way. But I'm going to do it in two parts, one being just based on the show itself, and then I'm going to call spoilers again before I get into connections to the book, tie-ins, and so forth, comparisons and whatnot, right? So that way, if you've not read the book, you won't have anything spoiled, right? So I'll start with the show itself and then get into the book, okay? And I'll make that fair warning when the time comes. So overall, as far as this episode is concerned, I thought it was a really great episode. Lots of tension, lots of things progressing. The only downside, the only nitpick that I would have about it is the Lord of the Rings styles opening about what the knife is and how it was created. And in some sense, I understand perhaps why it was there, because it wanted to raise the stakes. They've used the voiceover narration before, certainly at the season premiere, but it's like, you want to have that dramatic irony so that way you understand why the knife is important. But for my money's worth, they really did a great job executing that throughout the rest of the episode of explaining it. And so it just felt like they were too scared not to trust the work itself, and they had to kind of almost shoehorn this in. And so I didn't necessarily agree with that. Apart from that, it was really a wonderful episode. It really was. And like I said, one of the things that I do applaud it, whether it was Giacomo Paradisi or Grumman, they kind of laid out the stakes of the knife. Now, as far as the full backstory, sure, that wasn't included in it, but you understand what it is, what it does, why it's important, and so forth. And the rest of it, I think certainly could have came later through other, not expos, but moments within the story. So let's start with Lee Scoresby, right? Lee Scoresby, he has taken this mission to find Grumman. I'm just going to call him the shaman, right? The shaman. And, it's funny him going down the river and so forth through woods and trees and just being bitten to death and just complaining about it. I thought that was a nice little kind of touch. But, just kind of goes to show the lengths he's willing to find this person for the benefit of Lyra. He really has, this parental oversight of Lyra that he wants to make sure she is kept safe. And it was their meeting. I really appreciated their meeting. I thought their scenes together were really well done, both in terms of acting, cinematography, writing, and everything in between, editing and all that, right? Because as the shaman says, I called you forth, and when he presents the ring of Scoresby's mother, and you can see that there's something there, like it's not just BS, and there's something special about this person that he has been looking for. And although it may be crazy, it was a worthwhile pursuit. Now, obviously, he came under the pretense thinking that the shaman had the item that Lyra would need, and that didn't come to pass. He's just kind of a means to get that item, if you will. So it's kind of interesting in that way, and obviously, Lee takes that leap of faith by saying, okay, not quite literally, but, just in that sense, we're going to team up and we're going to go do this. Now, philosophically, it's very interesting how the shaman represents this idea of, almost like utilitarianism, the ends justify the means type of thing. So, he's much more on the side of, obviously, Lord Asriel, as he says, whereas Scoresby is very very critical of Lord Asriel for, leaving his daughter, for not caring about his daughter, like, from his perspective, just really not giving two craps about it. And so, in that way, there's this opposition, and yet they find the commonality of, like, it's almost like, listen, this happened, it's a terrible thing, but let it not be in vain, right? Lord Asriel left his daughter. Let's not let that be in vain. Let's help him. Same thing with Grumman, right? And as he says, like, don't confuse the man with the mission, right? And the mission is greater, right? And so now we're kind of getting glimpses into what this mission is. Because, as I'll talk about in terms of with Mary and so forth, certainly with Lyra and the prophecy, right, there's something bigger. And what we're learning is that, there's consciousness and there's oppression. So, kind of with the benefit of hindsight, that episode 2 with the Magisterium and really kind of going there, that represents the oppressive side, rather than consciousness. And so, things are really starting to kind of tie together, at least principally, right? We may not all know all the details, but principally we kind of know. And so it's interesting in that way. Now, I want to hear from your perspective, and I'm going to be sort of vague about it, but, like, what do you think the shaman represents, right? You've only seen, and especially for those who've not read the books, in that sense, you've known very little about this person. So, what do you think of him? What does he represent, and so forth? I'm very curious, right? All right, so let's talk about Mary, because I think this is a natural tie-in. And I'm going to kind of start at the end and then work my way backwards, if you will. So, at the end, she gets the machine to work, the cave. And it says basically, dust, shadows, dark matter, it's all the same thing. Matter plus spirit, they're the same thing. They're angels, and they're out for vengeance. And certainly in that sense, we know from Mary, like, she left the church because of it was restrictive, and she was going to be a nun, but she left. And certainly the Magisterium is supposed to represent religion and so forth. And so to have dust essentially be angels, it's certainly a WTF moment of, like, wait, how is this connecting together? And, in that sense, you have to kind of put a lot of trust into, okay, that this is going to all make sense, and that the payoff is going to be worth it. What is this thing? Because in that sense, like, when you think of angels, like, it's all tied into religion. But in that sense, it seems to indicate that the angels are different than the beliefs of the Magisterium. And that's a very interesting aspect, right? Because certainly the Magisterium, for all it's worth, has always feared, this dust stuff, hence what, Lord Asriel and so forth. So it's very intriguing in that sense. And pardon the pun, but, like, what I love about this season is worlds really are colliding. Certainly, we're going to get a lot more of that in the next episode. And no, I will not jump ahead, but the idea that Charles comes in and he wants to help fund this research, and his disguise is for military purposes. And obviously, what makes Mary unique is the fact that she does not want this to fall into that. She sees how important this is, and this cannot go into the wrong hands. And history, if nothing else, not just in terms of his dark materials, but also just kind of our own history. There's plenty of examples of otherwise good things falling into the wrong hands. Nuclear fusion is not necessarily bad, but when you turn it into an atom bomb, yeah, that's bad, and launch it, it's bad, right? So there's this power struggle and so forth about it. Apologies if you hear some chewing. That's my dog chewing on a bone, and I feel too guilty to take it away from her. But yeah, so as far as, Mary, I think if there is a benefit to and I don't know, I just joke that it's like the Lord of the Rings style narration, from Peter Jackson's movies in Fellowship of the Ring, that opening kind of monologue of what the ring is and its history. If it serves any purpose, it heightens this moment where, Mary makes that choice to, she doesn't know who Charles is. And if she did, she'd certainly double down and be like, hell no. But, just even principally, she says no, because she knows in the wrong hands, this is the wrong thing. And obviously, time is running short for her. They need money. And there's a lot more research to be done. But, nonetheless, she's willing to make the more difficult decisions, unlike her coworker who, anyone who's going to give him $1, he's like, okay, hello, he'll take audience with them. And, that's not her philosophy, and that shows good moral fiber, if you will. And yeah, I thought the scene with her communicating with the cave was really powerful, and I've talked about it, so I'm not going to kind of repeat myself in that sense, but really, really good stuff. Really appreciated. So then, as far as the other kind of characters, in terms of not worlds colliding, because obviously they're old friends, but nonetheless certainly colliding in worlds, in the sense that Charles comes in, tells Mrs. Coulter that he knows where Lyra is, and he tells her about essentially the deal he struck with Lyra and Will. He's got the lithiometer, he wants the knife, right? And so that'll kind of lure Lyra back. Hence, he can have this talk with Mrs. Coulter and say, for sure her daughter's coming back. And so it was an interesting. There was definitely some sexual tension, or as I saw. I mean, the hand reaching the hand, the snake on his hand, and we know snakes in religious terms symbolize temptation. So and certainly let me show you a new world. It just kind of conjures up the Aladdin, like a whole new world, which has sexual connotation there. So it'll be, I don't think they're going to really explore this, but certainly there is a passion. I don't know. It's just kind of interesting. It certainly, I mean, if nothing else, it didn't go unnoticed by me, and I'd be very curious to know how you interpreted these moments. Obviously, I think at the end of the day, Mrs. Coulter is about Lyra, and she's shown in the past that she's willing to do kind of whatever, not necessarily for Lyra, but to get her way. And so if she kind of essentially has to put up with flirtation by Charles, I wouldn't put it past her, right? So in that sense, I'm kind of curious what your thoughts on this are. But he takes her, to the, I'll call it a portal, to the portal that leads to Cittàgazze, and then from there to their world. And it's interesting, it's interesting because we now discover how Charles is able to get in and out of these various worlds, and you also know that he does know the dangers of Cittàgazze, which we kind of knew anyway. Hence why he, it's not that he was too lazy to go and get the knife for himself. It was more so that it presented a far greater fear, because of the spectres. And so, this is setting up nicely for what, more worlds colliding. So I love where this is going. And then, of course, we have the storyline of Lyra and Will. They have a very singular mission: get this knife. And the way this is executed, I really appreciate it. For example, the fight in particular, I thought was really well executed. It showed the dangers of it, and all that, and even Pantalaimon being kicked. and how that affects Lyra, just kind of call back to that. And it presents kind of this idea of destiny, and the knife has perhaps a will of its own, pardon the pun, because it is drawn to Will as the new knife bearer. And, as Giacomo points out, he has the same cut. And so, it's let's say the mark of the knife bearer. And as I mentioned at the top, I really thought the exposition of this was really well done. And the execution certainly, in how Will yields the knife, how he learns about the knife, and begins to be able to open up new worlds and close them up. And obviously this also draws a further connection to Lyra for a number of reasons. Number one, Pantalaimon touches Will, which is frowned upon, but he does it because, there's a care and there's a sympathy there. Lyra points out that, in terms of reading the alethiometer, it's you don't try to suppress the pain, but you just acknowledge it and work through it, in spite of it. And so that's kind of what allows him to, yield the knife in the way that he does. And certainly the knife itself, as Lyra is quick to point out, it has a similar fashion to Bolvangar, where they were, separating children and demons. So, she's very, that shows that she's very scared of this thing, but she also understands its power. And so in that sense, her mission from the top has always been to learn about dust, right? And I think what she's learning is that there's a good side to dust, and there's that excitement factor, which dates back to Jordan College. But there's also a deep dark side, hence, Roger's death. And certainly, one of the scenes I really, really appreciated was Lyra bringing Will the towel and then sitting down. For me, I saw the pain in Lyra's face, because it represented to me, however well-intentioned she may have been, she brought death upon Roger. And now just look at the state of Will. His face is beat up and his hand is slashed. And, he is now the bearer of the knife, which, can be exciting perhaps, maybe, but it comes with a lot. And it's not easy. And so I think Will recognizes this in that scene. And so I think he does a wonderful job of kind of alleviating Lyra of the responsibility to some sense. He's like, let's, what's done is done type of thing. We just have to get the alethiometer and we're going to do it together. Because it very much could have been easy, you messed this all up, it's all your fault and things like that. But, for him, he knows that complaining and thinking about the past is not going to get him to his father. That's his mission, to get to his father. And so this is a means to it. And whether or not, I think it remains to be seen how he feels about being the knife bearer and kind of his purpose, even though Lyra hints at it. His whole mission is really to go in search of his father because of the care that he has for his mother. And obviously, he wants his father. But much like Lyra, he understands that there's greater forces at work, I think, and so he must accept them as part of a larger whole in order to, be able to accomplish his, I won't say selfish is the wrong word, but I'll just use selfish because I can't think of anything else at the moment, his selfish mission, right? So overall, very, very incredible episode. And I thought the way they utilize the spectres, right? Now we're kind of seeing what the spectres do. And, as Giacomo says, let me face destiny in private. Let me face my destiny in private. And so, he accepted his fate. He did what he needed to do. And certainly, the boy who had tried to steal the knife, yes, it was a selfish means, but it's because of fear. He's fearful of the spectres. You understand that, and now that he doesn't have that protection, certainly we see that they're coming after him, and what it has done to him, we don't fully know because they cut away. They've spared us of that moment, if you will. Nonetheless, we can kind of, the imagination wanders and it can fill the gaps, and you can kind of see it as very horrific. So, in that sense, I thought it really, presented those aspects in a frightful way, and what's to come. The other aspect, we end on the witches. The witches, now make the decision, Rita and Serafina, to join forces, and they're gonna go into this new world that Lord Asriel, or this gap in this world that Lord Asriel's created. They're gonna go through, and they're gonna see this to the end, And so, worlds really are colliding, if you will. I love that kind of idea. Like, everything's coming together. There's parallel action and all that. All right, so that's it in terms of the episode. I'm going to talk about comparisons of the book and where things are headed. So if you're not interested in that because you don't want things spoiled, now is a fine time to tune out. I won't be upset. Please share your thoughts, though, in the comment section, or hit me up on social media at Svitek. I would love to hear from you. So that's been your warning. Now let's get into it. So overall, certainly, overall, I think this does track with the book. Certainly minor things altered here and there, but the spirit of the book, in terms of Mary communicating with the cave and kind of coming to an understanding, the way Will gets this knife, is certainly very, pretty much not 100%, but relatively beat by beat. Mrs Coulter and Charles having that meeting, that's in keeping. And certainly the witches and so forth. Like, the timing of it, may have been different in terms of the book and how it was kind of structured, but principally it does, have these events in the book and so forth. So I appreciate it, and even though I was critical of episode 2 because we spent so much time in the Magisterium, I'm glad that they're not really forcing that continually. And, if it served a greater purpose with that episode, then great. I think it did. As far as where this is headed, I'm really excited about this because, next episode is going to be the theft of the alethiometer, right? Lyra and Will are going to try to utilize the knife to steal the alethiometer. So that's going to be cool. But what's going to be interesting, Mrs Coulter, to the best of my recollection, and forgive me if I'm incorrect about this, but to the best of my knowledge, Mrs Coulter did not confront Mary. So I believe this is a new scene. If I'm incorrect, please let me know, and don't shame me to death. It's 20. I have 20/20 brain, and it's been a little bit since I've read the book, right? But this, I think, regardless, I think this will be an interesting scene to watch. Certainly Mrs Coulter facing off against Will of like, hey, so you're Lyra's new friend. I think it's going to be a powerful scene. And in general, how this is going to be pulled off, I think is going to be truly wonderful. I'm excited for where this is headed. And the aspect that I alluded to earlier as far as any of this is I'm interested, and the thing that I was alluding to is, would a first time someone who's not read the books understand that the shaman is Will's father? As a book reader, we know this because it's revealed, but I for me, that realization, and maybe I just missed the clues when I was reading the book first time because I was so young and whatnot. I didn't realize that the shaman was Will's father until the moment it's kind of truly revealed. Whereas it's that I don't want to ask someone directly who hasn't read the book to be like, hey, so do you think the shaman is Will's father? But certainly, I think the show itself is making very strong connections of like, I mean, the shaman outright says, hey, I left my son, right? And then we cut to Will. And so the way it's intercut, like it's basically, and the shaman talking about like, there's going to be a new knife bearer and I need to get to him and so forth. It's just, it's a world colliding. And so I'd be very surprised if people hadn't picked up on that. But at the same time, I'm not, it's not to say like I'm questioning anyone's intelligence if they haven't figured it out. But, that is a question in my mind that, is kind of brewing. And I would love to kind of know the answer from someone who is watching this, without the knowledge of the books. Anyway, these are my thoughts. Very curious to know what you think so far. Like I said, kind of a little bit ago, hit me up in the comment section or hit me up on social media at Svitek and let's chat. I think this is a wonderful season. Obviously, I think you wouldn't be here if you didn't love the source material or whatnot. And so, let's chat. Let's keep the dialogue going. Thank you, and hope to see you next time.